Oh, RebelCon's been fantastic. I think that, while we're in classes with the guys most of the time during the week, one of the things we're able to do here is we're actually able to interact with them. And, well, once you get to meet somebody in person, talk with them in person, the communication bandwidth increases. So this has been great. The people that I've met that are also trading, that I'm also in the Rebel pit with, and we are exchanging text messages back and forth, the camaraderie is just excellent. So I recommend anytime they have an in-person event, you got to come and attend.
Join us this December in Miami, Florida for Market Rebellion Live.
Bang!
I think Jared lives for that each and every day. I think he really does. That's great.
It's going to be a matter of time before we're doing that on some network somewhere or some streamer somewhere. I wonder if they'll let me still use my clapper.
I don't know why not. It's like old school, John. You've always had that Scorsese, kind of vibe anyway. For those that don't know, we're brothers. And for those that don't know, the older brother, John, has always been this guy he's kind of fancied himself one of the Coen brothers in a way, who we grew up with, by the way. And they talked Dad into investing in their very first movie. Those guys are the best, John. And you always had a little bit of a knack like they did for the creativity of all that.
Well, yeah, you're right, Pete. Not necessarily about me being creative, but about the Coen brothers. And our dad invested in Blood Simple. And he's probably one of the only doctors to ever make money every single year. I'm sure his estate is still getting paid now, Pete, for Blood Simple, their first movie. And then they made Raising Arizona and Miller's Crossing and obviously Fargo and a whole bunch of huge hits. But our dad was one of the first investors, and he did it just because they were neighbors. They're good boys. We should do this.
The best part, John, was when they came walking up. Now, here's two guys in their low 20s. They come walking up. They didn't even shave or anything, but they did have suits on, and they come walking up. They ring the bell at the house, and they say, "Hey, Dr. Najarian, we'd like to pitch you this idea." And my dad's looking at him, and I'll never forget, John, the way he looked at him, and he goes, "Jesus Christ, just get to the point. What the hell do you got?" They gave him this pitch for a movie, and he goes, what the hell? Why not? Writes him a check and he closes the door and said, "See you later." That's a good investor.
Yeah, well, that's the kind of investor you want. His luck, that's for sure.
Yeah,
because the guy definitely had a rabbit's foot.
Yeah.
All right, Pete. 1 minute macro. Jared, start the clock.
Start it.
We only do 1 minute of macro, folks, because we are convinced that you can't make money from us talking about macro BS. Now, hopefully everything else that we talk about, you guys can make money. We can't pull the trigger for you. We can't, buy or sell the stock. But my 1 minute macro today, Pete, pretty simple. People are not spending money as freely as they were because that credit card debt we talked about yesterday.
That was a good job of killing the first 30 seconds of that. You only used about 3 seconds on the actual macro. I'm going to do about the same thing. Here's the deal, John. In the macro world, people are trading down. Next, what do you got?
All right. Well, very accurate. They are indeed trading down, and that's something everybody needs to be aware of, folks. All right, let's get started with Target, because it is indeed, Pete, one of those stocks that is not doing well in this environment. People have not been buying what Brian Cornell and his staff have been putting on the shelves, at least not in the numbers that Wall Street thought. And, we go back to this, Pete, fool me once, okay, shame on me. Fool me twice, okay, maybe it's a coincidence. But when you actually make 3 times in a row something not happen, well, that's a trend. And this is a downward spiral right now. Not a death spiral, but a downward spiral for Target. Is Brian Cornell going to be able to break out of that spiral?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know what the answer is, John, right now, because I can't say. I thought that this would be maybe one quarter, maybe two quarters. But the fact, like you just said, that it's been three in a row where they've struggled, that's pretty disappointing. And I know that they're disappointed. And they've had a lot of different reasons why this has moved in this direction, John, but they have absolutely been missing on the earnings. They missed the lowest estimates on the street, John. That gives you a little bit of an idea of just how bad things have really gotten. Now, discretionary spending, that's part of what's really hurting them right now because people aren't doing that at Target. They're going to Walmart. Walmart right now is beating they're eating their lunch. They truly are. And that's something that's been going on now for the last couple of quarters. So it's something that this tailspin's going to stop at some point, John, but it really does come down to what are people really doing? And when you say trade down, when I said trade down on the macro side of things, what I was saying was people aren't trading down to Target. They're trading all the way down to Walmart. And that's exactly what we're seeing. That's what the numbers reflect right now.
Yep. And I would say also, Pete, that, and our friend Brian Sullivan just retweeted this, Pete, not from me, but he put out the Target says, quote, organized retail crime, end quote, is what drove an astounding $400 million loss at the Target stores across this country. That is something that you can't tolerate, that can't continue. And if any of these elected officials continue with the policies that have let that happen, you're just going to see more stores doing exactly what Target has done. And what the result will be, Pete, is fewer jobs. Right. Because if these stores, on the one hand, you might say, well, they should hire a bunch of security guards, which is true. But on the other, if you can't touch them, and if they're just going to be back tomorrow because there's no bail, what's the story? I mean, this is a really bad spiral. Somebody's got to stop it. We'll see who it is that steps in and does that. All right, QSR. This is also known as Restaurant Brands International, but QSR is, of course, quick serve. Pete, you and I love Popeyes, and that's one of the franchises that our brothers brought. They at one time had the #1 Popeyes franchise in the world. And they're up today, Pete, and 36% off the June lows as they announced that they get a CEO that's coming over from Domino's that's going to help boost them to the upside.
Yeah, and he's been an unbelievable CEO when he was at Domino's, John. He had a run from 2010 to 2018 where they had 29 consecutive quarters of growth. It gives you a little bit of an idea of just how sharp this guy is. He's very big into the digital. So I think what they're going to be focusing on now, John, will be all of those various names under the QSR. They're going to all be moving towards digital. And it's something that we've watched happen from Taco Bell as that CEO moved over to Chipotle and so forth. That's the kind of thing that I'm envisioning right now in terms of what he will bring to the table. And I think it's going to be something really extraordinary, John. When you talk about those numbers, how about the fact that they had $5.6 billion in sales when he started and $13 billion in sales when he left per year? I mean, it gives you a little idea of just the kind of growth that this guy brought. And if he can bring that to the QSR brands, that could be something very, very special. You're talking Burger King, you're talking about Hortons, you're talking about Popeyes, all those names. I think this is a very exciting move, and I think that's why people are so stoked today. That's why that stock is rising pretty rapidly.
Yep, and that's a reason, I think, to own the stock longer term, Pete. A great manager. That's what Warren Buffett always bets on, folks. So QSR, 2 thumbs up on that one. All right, Carnival Cruise Line, Pete. This has gone back and forth because, of course, they've basically issued debt that they needed desperately when they didn't have anybody on the boats because of COVID, and they had a lot of debt. So they had to issue more shares, convertible notes, and so forth. And then they were able to issue bonds eventually backed by the actual ships themselves. Now they want another $1 billion. And they need it, I'm sure, because they're still just coming out of this COVID funk. What do you think? Would you buy CCL? It's down better than 18% today, Pete.
I'll tell you what, if you decide to buy them, you better be in there for the long term. And I think it's going to take some time, John. They've been declining for a really long time when you look at their earnings. You go back to 2019, they had a decline. It was only a 3% decline, but nonetheless, a decline, right? And then you look at the next year, 2020. We understand why it was down 400%, by the way, but down 36%, down 26%. That's what we're looking at here in terms of what this company has. And when you look at the free cash flow, John, it's not flowing. It's actually emptying, and it's coming out at $3.6 billion. So when you look at all the different metrics that you look at when you're looking at this company, you've got to look at where is their cash, where is their debt. That's a number of 28 billion of debt versus cash. So when I look at it, John, it's going to take a while to make the turn. If somebody has that kind of patience, great. I think I'd rather wait around, wait to see this company start to make a move. I don't care if the stock doubles from here, John. I'd wait and see what this company is able to do, because quite honestly, they look like they are in, you mentioned the word death spiral. This looks like a death spiral to me.
Yeah. And, this is a classic example, folks, of a stock that when we do get unusual activity, especially to the downside, it has worked. But this is a stock that rather than buying the stock, I would always rather buy an upside call and bet on the stock, move into the upside, short and sweet, and then use your discipline and get out. All right. What about Advanced Auto Parts, Pete? Down 18% today, 36% year to date. Wow. Adjusted earnings down 11.5, almost 12% year over year. I know that we said that a lot of times people use Advanced Auto Parts, Riley Automotive, and so forth to be places to go when people got to hang on to their cars for longer. But apparently they're so strapped right now, another sign of the recessions that we're entering, that they just can't meet the street's expectations. Their earnings, they're not losses, but they're not earning nearly as much.
Yeah, the results are a little bit sluggish, John. There's a lot of disappointments, especially with the guidance. And we talk about trade down all the time, right? I mean, whether or not you're looking at Walmart or Target, I look at this particular name, by the way, 52-week lows today, $150. It was $244, 52-week high. Gives you a little idea of just how bad things have really gotten here. But, John, they're really going after the store brands. That's the interesting thing that I took away from this. So they're not only trading down, but they're going away from the national brands when they walk into the doors of the store, and they're going with the store brands. They're less expensive. And because of that, that's actually hurting things. Maybe the margins are okay, but when you really look at what's going on, John, that trade down is hurting them as well. That's part of the reason why they're missing, some of the earnings, and that why the stock is getting hammered the way it is. They just keep on hammering it. I don't think you need to jump in here. I think it's good to have patience here. I would be waiting. I'm not looking at stock or options in here right now, John.
Right. Anytime you're seeing, just like with Target, Pete, when you're seeing quarter after quarter after quarter, them struggling to meet estimates, just like you've said, Pete, people are trading down. And as they trade down, if they're in a grocery store, they're going to an off-brand from Captain Crunch down to Crunchy Lizards or whatever. When they're at Advanced Auto Parts, instead of buying Bendix or, some brand name auto part, they're buying, some Chinese knockoff of it, and the margins just aren't the same. All right. What about unusual activity? This is the segment, folks, where Pete and I tell you what we have seen as far as unusual buying. That is somebody that comes in and buys a lot of calls, which we say is bullish, or puts, which we say is bearish. They came in for URA, Pete, which is a uranium ETF. CCJ Camco is the largest holding in this ETF. That's a uranium miner, Camco is. And with Europe being challenged to provide electricity for their citizens and so forth, they don't have enough natural gas. We know that. They're going to have to burn fuel oil and coal, and guess what else? They're going to have to keep the nukes running longer. So in this one, they bought 15,000 of the December 24 calls with the stock at 21.37. So that's basically about an 11 or 12% move that may or may not happen all the way into December, but all you got to do is a quick pop. If you get a quick pop, these calls that people were paying 35 cents for could go to $1 like that. And that means you nearly tripled your money. So that's my trade, Pete. I love uranium, and I love this trade.
I do too. I like that one a lot, John. I always try to avoid ETFs if I can, but every once in a while, you just have to go with the ETF. Or like you said, you could trade over to something that's a big portion of that, like a CCJ or whatever. So I like that advice. I think that's really good. What I'm looking at is 3M, John. What I'm looking at here with 3M is we're seeing a little bit of positive paper. What I like about that is this is a stock that's not really done a whole heck of a lot. They've had a lot of pressure on them from multiple different ends, from lawsuits to, the input costs and everything else in between. So that's been a bit of a problem. But with the stock trading a little over 130, we had a buyer today. These are very short duration options that they're buying. I liked it enough that I bought these. They bought 5,000 of the November 131 calls. They were 50 cents up to about 75 cents. All we need is a little bit of a spike to the upside, John. If there's anything positive in the markets over the next few days, I think 3M's got an opportunity to make that kind of a move to the upside. So we'll see if they do. But somebody's out there putting some nice money on the table saying this will happen. I kind of agree with them right now, and I think the stock could get well over 131. It got over 131 today. So could it get over in the next couple of days? Absolutely it could. So that's what I like about this one. We'll see how it pans out. But this is a very, it's a Minnesota company. I like that. They're right in my backyard practically. So I know them very well. And I think this is one where the unusual option activity looked pretty strong for me. That's why I jumped in.
All right. Well, I like 3M, Pete. It is a very short-term trade, folks. So that means that if you're buying here as you're listening to us, you're picking it up on the lows of the day. I like your odds on that. And remember, if it's not working for you right away, don't ride it to zero. Cut your losses. That's just advice from 41 years of trading. You can't let your losses run. You've got to cut them off. All right, Pete, what about a surprise team in the NFL? So NFL season, we're more than half done now. Who do you like from this point in the season?
I'll tell you what's the shocker team for me, John, and it should be for most everybody. And if you have a different one, that's great, but you might agree with me on this one. The New York Jets, Jets. How about the fact that coming into this season, did anybody really think much about the Jets? Did they think the Jets would be able to go up and maybe beat Buffalo or something like that? My guess would be no. But all they've done, John, is dominate teams. And how are they doing it? They're doing it with defense. Here's what I'm going to project to you. You've got a rating of the number 2 defense in all of the NFL. They're number 4 with interceptions with 11. They're number 3 with average yards per play. They got 26 sacks. That defense helps you win championships. Now, on offense, they need to step it up a little bit, but they've got some great receivers. I think what they've done in the draft over the last couple of years has been absolutely fantastic. They did lose a great running back that they grabbed in the second round out of Iowa State, John Brees Hall. That kid was a stud. He was averaging almost 6 yards a carry. I love him, but unfortunately, he's gone for this season. We'll see how the offense goes. They've been moving along without him at this point in time. Matter of fact, they made a trade with Jacksonville to get Robinson, who's done a very nice job filling in as well. But when you've got Sauce Gardner at the corner, when you've got a lockdown corner who's 6'3", that's something that's pretty impressive. You've also got Wilson, the wide receiver from Ohio State. He's a stud. He's been absolutely stepping up and doing everything right. And I think with Robert Saleh, what he's done as a coach, he's doing everything he did at San Francisco. He was a defensive coordinator there. He built an unbelievable defense. He's done that with the Jets. And I think the Jets are the absolute shocker right now of the year in the NFL.
Well, I'm going to pick, Pete, Miami Dolphins, because you said it yesterday, Tua. That kid, he's had that concussion or more than one concussion, depending if it's the NFL measuring it or not. But he has led that team, and they are right now at 7-3. So I like where they stand. I like that they're leading the East. Obviously, they're going to have to deal with the Bills and the Patriots again. We all get that. But it was either that for me, Pete, or I was going to go with Derrick Henry and the Titans because, again, they're 6-3. They've got a game coming up, but they're 6-3. And all he does, if you ever see a picture of this guy, folks, outside of his football uniform, he looks like he's in a bodybuilding contest or something, Pete. But instead of just being, as you've called them, airport players, the players that look good but can't play. This guy plays and he looks like a bodybuilder or a power lifter. I mean, whatever, he runs a 4.5. He's 245, 250 pounds. Nobody wants to get in the way of this guy. And ever since Alabama and a couple national titles there, Pete, all he's done is run over people. So I'm going to go with Miami, but Tennessee's a close second for me.
I think those are great calls, although I don't think Tennessee's a shocker, and I don't know that Miami's a shocker. I think a lot of people were looking at what that team had done in the offseason in the last couple of years in the draft, and I think that they were sort of looking at them to be somewhere, but I don't think anybody ever thinks about the Jets and says, wow, are they a playoff team? By the way, they haven't been in the playoffs, John, since 2010, to give you a little idea of how bad things have been with these guys. Now, how about this one? Jeff Saturday on a Sunday. He had his first game last week, right? Yeah. Now, he got the luckiest draw that you could possibly get. What did he get? He got the Las Vegas Raiders. Why do I say it's the luckiest call he could get? The Raiders defense, John, is the worst defense in the NFL. And when I say that, that's not an exaggeration. They are ranked number 32 in defense. And that's a bit of a problem. They're also, in terms of interceptions, John, they've got 3 all year. That puts them at number 30 in the NFL. Their quarterback completions against them is number 32. That's as bad as it can get. So when you get the opportunity and you've got Matt Ryan had his best game of the year against the Las Vegas Raiders, and Jonathan Taylor had his best game of the year against the Las Vegas Raiders. It gives you a lot of the ideas of why this team just lined up. And we talked about this when Jeff Saturday was actually signed in as the head coach. He gets to start off with something really, really special. But it gets a little bit tough pretty quick, John. He's got the Eagles next. They got the number 1 defense in all of football. The Steelers are struggling, so they might get a little bit of an advantage on that one. But then you've got the Cowboys and the Vikings. So let's not just say right out of the gate that Jeff Saturday was just really phenomenal, because I'm not so sure you and I could have coached that team. I think we could have walked on the field on a Sunday and said, all right, guys, let's get out there and play. And I think we could have won that game. But going forward, it's going to be a little bit different. What do you think about that?
Well, I've been getting so much pleasure, Pete, out of watching your pal, Pat McAfee, on his YouTube channel, because, man, he went after Cowher about, Jeff Saturday and his, pick to lead the Colts, at least for this season. Again, remains to be seen how far past that it goes, Pete. But I thought that was just hugely entertaining. And the fact that I'd love to see Cowher and McAfee go toe-to-toe. That would just be phenomenal. But obviously, I have to agree that the Raiders can't do anything right. That is a franchise that's run by people that just really don't know football. Their father did, but they don't. And I have to say it, Pete, because, it's been borne out. There have been so many stupid moves made by the Las Vegas Raiders that I just, I'd be in the same position as Cowher if I didn't say that, hey, there's something wrong with that franchise. And it starts at the top. It's the ownership. And I hope sooner or later they just decide, the Davis family, to take the money and walk away, because I don't know if they ever can win under this ownership group, Pete.
It's going to be tough. I would say this, in defense of them a little bit, the offense actually has performed very well this year. Derek Carr's done fine. And obviously Adams has done a great job as a receiver. And they've actually, offensively, they've performed pretty well, John, but defensively, my goodness sakes, they have 10 sacks on the year. Now, there are players out there. There's at least one player who's got 11 and a half, and a couple other guys. One of them is Najarian Smith from the Vikings. He's got 9.5 sacks. There's individuals out there who have as many sacks as this entire team has this year. It gives you a little bit of an idea of the defense and how pathetic they are this year on defense. Offensively, they're not so bad. Defensively, which is something the Raiders always used to have, not so good. So I'd agree with you there. And I think it always does start at the top, whether it's a stock or a team or whatever. It starts at the very top. You got your CEO, you got your CFO, you've got all those CTOs and everybody else. Starts there, then you get to the fundamentals, and then you look for, okay, what makes us great? What makes us grow? And it's the same thing. So breaking down a stock or a team is very, very similar. And I'll tell you what, the breakdown of this team would be exactly what you just said, John. The ownership's got to change.
Yep. Well, and from some rumors Pete and I have been hearing, we're going to see some ownership changes, not in this case, but in the case of another West Coast team, Pete. That's coming. And hopefully we can share that with you guys soon on the Rebel Edge. Hey, remember, if you want to join us in Miami, it's the 8th through the 10th of December. It'll be me, my brother Pete. It'll be so many of the luminaries that are either technical analysts like AJ Monte and Brian McCormick, or experts in spreading like Ryan Mastro, Bill Johnson. It'll be a fabulous time, folks, and it's limited to 25 people. It's nearly sold out. You can go to marketrebellion.com/Miami to learn more. That's marketrebellion.com/Miami. And hopefully we'll see you in Miami. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow on the Rebel's Edge, 1 p.m. Eastern Time.